Hey guys, it's Jill Jackson here. By popular request, I am reshooting our How Do We Know If Students Are Engaged video because the last one I had the flu and I was wearing my fluffy robe. Today I'm feeling great and I don't have my robe on. I am dressed for the day normally. So here we go. I want to talk to you about the 3 ways that we know kids are engaged. We know that we talk a lot about engagement. But one of the things that we struggle with is to identify when it's truly happening and also to kind of think about why we need engagement. So there are 3 ways that we know that kids are not necessarily engaged. Number 1 is sustained, silent staring. So we know that a lot of times if kids are just quiet and they're just sitting there, that they may not be engaged. They could be like you and I are when we're like physically there but checked out mentally or in our brains. We know that if kids are quiet, and we also know that if they're compliant. Those are the 3 ways that they may or may not be engaged. We want kids to actually be doing stuff around the content that they're learning, not just sitting and absorbing. If sitting and absorbing was enough, our kids would hit benchmark, because certainly our students, even those who don't hit the benchmark or anywhere near it, attend school pretty darn regularly and they're around the instruction. But what we need them to do is do more than just sustained silent staring, being quiet, or being compliant. And I think a lot of times we can get into the habit of seeing compliant kids as like, oh, my kids are on target because they're well behaved. So well behaved does not equal well engaged necessarily. So what we're really focusing on doing here is figuring out, how do we measure engagement? And so I really feel like this is where we can lose perspective a lot. And I just want to kind of bring us into alignment here to make sure that we're focusing on the right stuff. So we have to, in order to know whether kids are engaged or not, we have to be able to measure that they are engaged. And there are 3 main ways that we know that they are engaged. The first way that we know kids are engaged is that they are saying something. And hopefully they're saying something like in a complete sentence using academic language. When kids are just finishing our statements, it ends up a lot of times that the teachers are the ones using the big words and the big academic language, and the kids just don't use it. So we need to have them using the most important vocabulary words or the content area vocabulary and using complete sentences practice when they're saying something. The second way that we can measure that a student is engaged is that they're writing something. Now, this could be writing something on a whiteboard if it's something that's really, really simple, or like a 1-word answer or 2-word answer, or it could be a longer period of time. You give them 5 minutes to respond in writing to something you've been reading or something you've just explained. Could be them writing something in a composition book or a journal. Lately, we've been working a lot with having kids keep a 1 sheet. A 1 sheet is literally a 1 sheet of paper in a notebook of the most important stuff that they learned about one topic. So if we're learning about, totally making this up, but if they're learning about the Civil War, they have 1 piece of paper that has the most important stuff. That limits how much they write on purpose so they get the most important ideas. That would be an example of writing something. The third way that we know that that kids are engaged, we can measure that they're engaged, is that they're doing some sort of physical response. Thumbs up, thumbs down, stand up, sit down, go in this corner if you agree with this and discuss this with your partners, go in this corner if you agree with that. So we have saying something, writing something, and giving some sort of physical response. The difference between sustained silent staring, being quiet, and compliant is that those things are not measurable. When you add in an oral, written, or physical response, you know that you can measure whether they're engaged. And the really important thing is twofold about measuring whether kids are engaged. And these are 2 big ideas over here. Number 1 is, if students are not engaged, we have no way of giving them feedback. So if we don't know whether they know what they're talking about or don't, we have no way to give them feedback. So our engagement techniques on the most important content elicit more feedback from the teacher. And then the other reason that we have to have measurable feedback is that we have to make sure that we are correcting errors. if we aren't correcting errors, then there may be no reason for students to be receiving that instruction, because they could be getting it incorrect, they could be getting it wrong, and there's no way to correct it. So engagement is not just about keeping kids excited about the instruction. It certainly is about that. We want them in it. Our enthusiasm transfers over. They start to get really excited about what they're learning. But really, engagement is also, or maybe even primarily so, that we can give kids as much feedback as possible and also correct any errors so they get that perfect practice. The ultimate reason why we do engagement techniques, or why we use engagement and we monitor it and we measure it, is ultimately so that kids can master content and that kids can master skills. That's the ultimate reason why we do this. Because if the engagement doesn't lead to increased teacher feedback and increased error correction by the teacher, which in turn leads to them having mastered more content and more skills, or gotten more mastered at more content and more skills, then there's no point for the engagement, or no point of the engagement. And I think one of the things that we've struggled with through the years, at least I've struggled with through the years, and I've seen the similar things with other teachers as well, is that we get all jazzed, we get all jacked up about all these cool engagement ideas, and we forget that the engagement is only a tool for content and skills mastery. So, quick recap: engagement is not sustained silent staring, quiet and compliant kids. It may look like that for blips at a time, but ultimately the only way that we can measure engagement is by forcing kids through engagement techniques to say something, write something, or do some sort of physical response, which ultimately allows us to give them feedback, allows us to correct errors, and all of that leads to mastery of content and skills. So I hope that's helpful, and I hope this is a simple reminder for you as you start your school year. I know for me, what I end up giving, the most advice I end up giving at the beginning of the school year to the thousands of teachers that I get to work with is, let's keep it really simple. Let's keep it really, really simple so we don't lose sight of what really matters. And engagement really matters as it relates to students engaging with content and skills in a way that they become more mastered. And ultimately, the real goal for us as we help kids become more mastered in content and skills is that they become independent with these things. Because if they never become independent with these particular grade level content or grade level skills, then what ends up happening is they're relying on us and they never hit that mastery point. So we want content and skills to lead to mastery and have them so practiced on it through engagement techniques that they become totally independent. That's what true mastery looks like. So happy school year, guys. I hope you have a great day.